Welcome to the Courage to Live podcast. Welcome to the Courage to Live podcast. My name is Josh Bitsko, and I'm a retired police captain with 24 years of experience out of Las Vegas. Currently, I travel the country and I teach people about courage, leadership, and resilience. Joined by my wife and co-host, Jenna.
Hi. Struggling.
Yeah, I kind of struggled on that opening. We're not
Yeah.
going to cut it out, though. We're going to
Wow,
leave it in.
yikes.
Um, Today's podcast, we're going to go through steps on, like, let's say it's day one as a leader, your first time being in a leadership position. What are things you need to know, and how do you prepare yourself for that?
Mm.
Um, but before we do, how are your Warriors doing?
Oh, the Warriors are warriorsing. They are doing what they do every season. Well, I shouldn't say every season, the last couple seasons where they start out really strong. They look good. Steph gets injured or has a bad couple of games. Currently, he's injured. And then the season sucks. So I think we're 11 and 10 right now. And obviously, when you listen to this, we'll probably have a worse standing. We're,
Or better?
we're That's not how this works.
um, well, yeah, and I mean, usually what happens is they kind of get it together the last third of the season and
Mhm.
kind of make a playing game or something like that, right?
Yeah, and then you have a little bit of hope,
Mhm.
and then they break your heart.
Yeah.
So
You guys had your run,
we
a
we
couple years
did,
ago.
and we need another one.
Yeah.
So I feel like people could say that about the Dodgers too. You guys have had your run,
Mm. Yeah, it's just going to keep on going.
right? So you understand.
Well, I do. The Warriors can't pay their players as much as the Dodgers pay their players.
Yeah, I have no idea,
Mm.
but luckily there's still college basketball, and my Michigan State is they're undefeated so far.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
They do play Duke this weekend, and I hate Duke with a passion. So I'm hoping they can win that
yeah.
one.
Well, let's hope.
Yeah. I was gonna boo Duke, but I don't want to say boo.
Okay.
Yeah.
So now the basketball talk is over.
Yeah, sorry.
No, it's good. It's good. Um, Day one as a leader. I mean, I can tell you what I was feeling emotionally on mine. Like I wanted to do so good. Like I wanted to go out there and make all the right decisions and, just be a leader, like,
A
and
leader among
a
men.
leader of men.
Mm-hmm.
And I put a ton of pressure on myself, but I really didn't prepare right for it. I kind of thought, well, I had a couple assumptions. I thought, number one, I was a good patrol cop, good at the technical side of it, was in K9. So then that would translate to me being a great leader, right? I was good at my job. So that would make me good as a leader. And, I also had that assumption that, well, good leaders are like born leaders. Like it's just, you don't have to study for it. You don't have to practice. You got it or you don't. I also received zero training before
Typical.
on how to be a leader before
Yeah.
my first night as a sergeant, right? Did you feel some of the same things before you started as a leader when you're in a leadership position?
Yeah, I mean, I was a peer to everyone that I then managed.
Rough.
Yeah, that was I know that happens in policing, but I mean on the civilian side of it, that um for our specific section, they wanted to have a manager that was an analyst and came from that section, and it was an internal hire. So I had to turn around and be a boss to the people that I had become friends with over 11 years.
Yeah.
So along, it's not like it was like a year or like, no, it was 11 years that I had worked with these people.
That's a huge challenge in leadership, right? And I think on the civilian side, that happens more often than in the police side, but unless you're on a smaller agency,
Mm.
because I had something similar. I went back to K9 as a sergeant where I was a handler and peers with everybody, but I got 4 years to be a sergeant first and learn how to do that.
Yeah.
And then I went back and I think they were expecting the same, person, and then I wasn't. So
Mhm.
it kind of took, but there were some obstacles there, but not like what you're describing. Like you go home on Friday as an analyst and you come into work on Monday as a manager.
Yeah, I literally had to, I mean, I didn't have to, but I chose to, right before I took over, I unfriended and unfollowed all of my peers, and so that they couldn't follow me and I didn't follow them, and had to kind of like, obviously I didn't, say I can't be your friend anymore, but I definitely had to put some distance, and I couldn't be that same peer anymore. I couldn't hang out with them on the weekends. I couldn't that so that I guess I could not be friends anymore. I guess that's what I did.
If that relationship changes.
Yeah.
100%. And like for me, so my first night is, so the good thing about on the police side, especially on a large agency, I was in K9, I promoted to sergeant, and I went to a completely new area command that, I had never worked at before. I'd been there as K9, but as our downtown area command. And I had to change. I bought a whole new belt because my belt in K9 had kind of gotten ratty. And I'm like, well, I can't as a sergeant go in there with a ratty belt. I needed like a nice new shiny belt. Boots are shined. Everything's ready. And so I get to work like an hour early, and I go into the sergeant's office, my desk that I'd gone in on the weekend, and like got all set up. And I was starting to put all the stuff on my belt in the office, getting ready. And so the sergeant's office was right next to the conference room where a lot of, police officers ate their lunch. And so I'm getting everything ready, and I go to put my pepper spray in the holder, but I had an old holder and it was broke. And when I did, I pushed the button on accident, pepper sprayed my hands.
Mm.
And so now my hands are burning, and it's like I'm trying not to cough. And I hear two cops eating lunch in the room next to me start to cough. So I grab my stuff and I go out the side door because I did not want the story to be, oh, the brand new sergeant pepper sprayed himself, even though I did.
Yeah.
So I went out, threw everything away, washed my hands, but my hands were all red and like burning
Mhm.
for like, 45 minutes. But my biggest fear that whole shift, which, it's funny what you focus on, was somebody calling me and me not having the answer to their question.
Mm.
Like I really wanted to, um, show that I should be a sergeant, that I'm ready to be a sergeant. And for me, that was having all the answers immediately available, which isn't where we'll talk about, what you really need to prepare for.
Well, like that's a natural response to have, though. Nobody wants to, in a leadership position, not have the answer.
Yeah. Um, no, you're right. And so that's because that's what the leaders I looked up to really usually had an answer for me when I would call them for something.
Yeah, they just made it up half the time, right?
Yeah, for
Yeah.
sure. That's I ended up
Yeah. Same.
making it up. But that was my biggest stress. So I met with my team, or my, my officers, and I'm like, I'm not going to give you some big rah rah speech. You guys have been cops for a little bit. Some of them haven't been, but I'll meet you out in the field on calls. And here's my cell phone number. Be safe. And figure I go call to call and meet with them. And I did that. I went out there and, talk to them, give them my expectations individually. That's how I operated, not like the big group meeting. And it's like 1 in the morning and my phone rang. It was the first call I got as a sergeant from a cop on a call. He's like, hey, this domestic violence. And so in Nevada, there's a mandated arrest for domestic violence at the time for anybody if there's a domestic relationship. And that goes like for like roommates at the time. That's changed since then, spouse, children, brother, sister, all those domestic relationships. And it lines it out in NRS. And this cop calls me. He's like, "Hey, Sarge, I'm on this DV." I'm like, "Okay. Do you know, is a brother-in-law count as a domestic relationship or a DV?" So literally the first call, and I truly had no idea because in my years as a patrol, I've never encountered that. So I thought for a second, and I'm like, instead of like making it up, because obviously that could get somebody in a lot of trouble, I just said, you know what? I don't know. You look it up in NRS. I'll look it up in NRS. Call me back. Hung up. I pulled out my NRS. If my memory serves me, it did not.
I would say statistically, counting statistics, we did not count that
Yeah.
as
So
domestic. Yeah.
he should have called you,
You should
not
have.
me.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, it did not count as a domestic relationship. But my first thing was that, biggest like fear of mine to not have the answer. And I stayed in contact with that cop throughout the course of the rest of my career. And he kind of messed with me about it. But then he's like, I actually really appreciate that you told me you didn't know. And not just, well, where can you find that information? Which
You
that's
put
what a
it
lot.
back on him,
Yeah.
right? Yeah.
Why are you calling me for that? Well, where
You
can you
should
find that?
know this. Why
Yeah.
don't you know this?
That's more often than making it up that I would get is like,
Yes.
why are you calling me as your boss? You
You
should
should know
just,
this.
yeah, you should know this. Look it up. But really, it's because I didn't know.
Yeah.
So, that was my biggest concern. And I was able to turn that into a positive experience. But that was, again, I just didn't have that training in specific leadership. And I had this mindset that leadership is something that you're born with, you can't learn.
So, step one of advice is you don't know what you don't know, and that's okay.
Yes. Yep. And you're going to make mistakes, and you need to prioritize what you learn and prepare for based on the severity of the mistakes that you could make. Right. So, like, first things first, you need to know the structure of your team. Like, you're going to have to take time to learn people individually, and I'll get there. But, what is minimum staffing? What are their critical roles? Like, you have to kind of learn that first, because if you don't have that, then how do you even make those basic decisions? Because someone's going to ask you for a day off on your first day. And every time I'm going to, I want this new sergeant. He's not going to know that I've
Yeah.
taken 10 days off in the last month. So kind of learning about that, what are the critical roles, and what are the most important things that are going to be like those, like, red zone you need to have done day one. So, so once you learn those things, then at the same time, you need to start becoming a student of leadership and finding books, podcasts, like whatever it is, and spend time learning specifically about leadership as a skill set.
I think with that being said, I knew leaders at Metro who wanted to be viewed as great leaders, and so they would be like, read this article.
Mhm.
But they actually didn't practice anything that was preached in that article, but they would just give people articles.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, learning for you're doing this for yourself. That's
Yes.
you know, the quiet work, the quiet professional to become a better leader, and not blasting it out to the world. Oh, I'm reading all these leadership books, and you come in my office and there's 10 books behind me, but probably haven't been opened. But you just want people to think that. So, that's a big part of throughout the course of while you're learning the technical parts of the job as a leader, also studying leadership. Like for me, I was a little late to the game. I went to, that there's a couple books out there. I had to read the Leadership Challenge, Good to Great, I think was one. Honestly, Extreme Ownership, I will say, was one of the best leadership books I've ever read. The caveat there is when you read a lot of leadership books, a lot of times the content is the same or similar, right? The basic tenets of leadership. People have been leading people since people were around. So, the basic, no one's inventing really anything new in leadership. Finding a book that packages it in a way that you enjoy and that will resonate with you is what's important. So, I've said leaders are readers, but if you hate reading, there's podcasts out there. There's different podcasts available on leadership that you can consume while you're driving to and from work. And it's funny, what I always found is because I did both, I'd read into a podcast, or listen to a podcast, and when I'd read about leadership, um, oftentimes what I was specifically reading about that same day or the next day was a situation I was confronted with. It's just because your mind is attuned to it.
Mm-hmm.
And then now I was, I was reading about how to be or how to hold somebody accountable as a leader. And then here I am, I have to do that. So it's just a constant work in progress. So of everything we're going to talk about, like specific things for a leader, a brand new leader, become a student of leadership. Just like, when we say if you're a cop, be the best cop you can be, learn the job specifically to help you in the other podcast we talked about through critical incidents. Well, now as a leader, you have to become a student in leadership. And that's the burden of leadership, right? It's a whole new job. The best cops don't always make the best leaders. The best, you know, teachers don't always make the best principals. Like, however it is, like, just because you're good technically in a position to leadership is its own skill set that you have to learn.
And I think the only thing I would add to that is, and maybe you're going to talk about this later, I don't know. We kind of just like riff through these.
I love it.
Um, is understanding human behavior. And that might be the sociologist in me, but understanding how people's environment impacts their behavior. And I don't just mean at work, I mean at home. So, understanding how environment impacts people's behavior, but also understanding what drives and motivates people because it's going to be different for everybody, right? An underlying one that every single human feels is the need and desire to be valued. So, again, learning human behavior, learning your people's specific behaviors, drivers, motivators, and then also understanding that everybody wants to feel valued also goes a long way. I think you have to understand not just the leadership tenets because you can understand those tenets and not understand anything about human behavior and then it won't work,
Yeah,
if that makes sense.
it does. And as I became, more experienced leader and I had more people working for me, like, as a lieutenant, I had a whole shift. As a captain, I had a whole station. I kind of, for me, I always broke it down in it down and dirty. Like, yes, as a sergeant, you can learn everybody super individually, know what motivates them, know
Mhm.
their experience. But as I promoted throughout, and I still tried to understand that about my people, I always broke it down into motivation and experience.
Mhm.
What motivates this person and what experience they have.
Yeah.
You can have super high motivation and low experience. Hard worker, probably going to make some mistakes. You have the low motivation, high experience, maybe someone that needs to get nudged a little bit to do their job, but they're experienced. Then you have the rare high experience, high motivation. Those are going to be the people that like they're your top performers generally. And then you have low experience, low motivation. Those are your problem people, right? It's like it was a box for me.
Yeah.
And I would try and put people like, okay, when I've limited face to face with them, trying to understand that. So then I know how to motivate somebody. Like you take somebody that, high experience, high motivation, but they're not in a leadership position. Maybe money's not necessarily what's going to motivate that person, but maybe it's giving them a little more responsibility.
Accolades,
Hmm.
verbal praise in front of people, whatever it is.
Yeah. They want to be seen as that informal leader. So, but breaking it up into that for me it was always the most reliable way, and I used to say all the time, you know, work ethic and attitude are the two most important things. You give me somebody with a good work ethic, good attitude, I'll take that way over somebody that's super technical because we can teach you the rest. I can't teach you work ethic. I can't teach you a good attitude. So, that's so you're day one supervisor. You're learning the technical part of the job. What you need to know is that from that specific leadership position. And at the same time, you're starting to learn about being a leader. And then, through that process, you have to learn how to prioritize problems, right? Like, so, as a leader, whatever your industry is, you're going to be seen as a problem solver. And you have these resources to solve those problems. So learning and here's the thing, a lot of times you're going to get bombarded with problems. And so your people are going to call you with problems, your bosses are going to call you with problems. And so learning how to prioritize what is important through all of that noise.
Yeah.
And that's through candid conversations with your people, through with your leadership, with, understanding again the technical side of the job. Because if not, then you're just going to be going in different directions all the time. And so, what are the main priorities and breaking it down, the fewer the better, right? Like, you're a sergeant of an area. My main priorities are, you know, bringing down crime and my cops being safe. And so if every problem that comes in, I prioritize that the ones that like right now, safety of the officer safety stuff, that's going to be a priority. And then crime fighting, that's going to be a priority. And then you can kind of schedule your time around prioritizing what needs to get done. And I'm talking more generalizations, not on a critical incident. Then your priorities are going to just shift, right? So, learning what's important, learning, the what problems you need to solve and how you're going to solve them, then that's how you're starting to get to that point where you're doing the job daily, you're learning how to be a leader, you're learning how to motivate people. You're just really, it's like we talked about in the last, you're breaking this part up into small pieces to continue forward progress and know you're going to make mistakes in those times. You
Mm-hmm.
absolutely are.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I think it's really important as because you're probably what, 3 months in at this point.
Mhm.
It's also important during that time to learn your people. And I guess that goes back to what I just said before.
Mhm.
But, and I don't just mean their work ethic and what motivates them. I also mean what's going on in their life at home. Are they married? Are they in the middle of a divorce? Do they have kids? You know, what is that person's life like outside of work, so that you have an understanding of if they have an off day or um, a bad time. Well, maybe that's because they're getting divorced. But if you're not sitting down to get to know them individually, you'll never know that, right?
Yep.
So I think that is super important. And during those conversations, it helps understand, or it helps you understand what motivates them, how you can help them feel valued. Lost my train of thought.
Okay.
Sorry.
Just say something to wrap it up that helps you motivate them, understand them, and you know, prioritize their mental health or something. Just wrap it up, and I'll cut those together.
Okay. Trying to think of what makes sense.
Well, you can just say something, and all of that helps you lead them.
So I'm just trying to think because there was something else that I wanted to say. Um, those things are super important, but then also when you're sitting down having those conversations with them, at least for me, it was, especially at the very, very beginning, what do you need from me? How can I help you? What are your short term goals? What are your long term goals? And how can I help you get there? Was also, again, helps you get a sneak peek into what they value, what motivates them, what their goals are, so that you then are able to have a peek into how you can help them as a leader, if that makes sense.
And no, it does. I mean, so for me, why that what you just said was so important was, and I think we've talked about this. I had to switch what I got joy from my job when I promoted from officer to sergeant.
Mm-hmm.
Because, yes, as a sergeant, you're still kind of a cop. You're out there chasing bad guys, but not near as much. So I ended up getting value from helping people grow in their career.
Yep.
Finding those people that were motivated, finding those people that wanted, to either transfer, get some specialized section or promote. And it's great because I still get to see those people now of high rank being successful. And it's like I had a small part in that. And
Yep.
so now what you were talking about is, not you're doing it for the right reasons, but then you also get joy and the part of, enjoying your job is you like what you do. And, if you're just worried about problems all day and risk assessment and all of that, then are you really enjoying your job? So what do you find that you enjoy?
Well, and that's a good way to pour back. And you mentioned, can't remember if it was this podcast or the last one. They all kind of blend together sometimes, but that helps pass your knowledge and experience on to other people, so that that knowledge and experience isn't lost. And when I took over as the analytical manager in internal affairs, the analyst that was assigned to me, well, I had two. I had one that had 20 years of experience, very low motivation. And then I had one that had zero analytical experience and very high motivation. And that terrified me because I was like, how I'm going to have to teach her how to be an analyst, like from step one, day one, which I can do, but that's just a lot of work, right? But I saw, again, going back to what I said, sat down with her, learned what her goals were, what her experience had been up to this point, and I said to her, I can help you be a great analyst, but you'll have to be open to me giving you feedback, and it's not going to be positive all the time. And if you do that, I can help you be great. And she was absolutely open to it, and she became the best analyst out of both sections that I managed that I ever had. She's incredible, and I'm not saying it's because of me. It's because she had the goal that she wanted to be great. She also was humble and willing to listen and take feedback. And her and I did some incredible things with that
Hmm.
section.
No. And I bet you that also felt good for you to be part of that with her.
Totally. It felt good to have somebody trust me and know that I knew what I was doing and I could help them get to where they wanted to go. And it felt good to be able to have somebody that I could then rely on and know that I could give her anything that I needed done and she was able to do it.
So the last thing, and as we're going through this, I mean, this could be 3 or 4 podcasts really, but so the last thing, and these are just kind of down and dirty. Day one, as a leader, what do you need to learn? The last thing I think most new leaders fall into this trap where they think they have to do everything themselves
Yes.
and they don't learn how to delegate.
Yes.
And I think there's a couple reasons for that. Like delegation is important, but there's also like, there's fear that if something gets messed up that you delegate, then why I would just rather do it myself. Well, and the problem with that is there's twofold. Number one, you're letting that fear make that decision. So that's how micromanagers happen. Like that
Yes.
people are like on top of their employees to make sure they're so scared of them making a mistake because how it's going to reflect them, which often are the same people that throw people under the bus when a mistake is made.
Yes.
But you're also robbing those employees of the experience of what you're asking them to do. Meaning, I'm a sergeant, I'm a lieutenant, I have all these tasks, and I'm just going to do it all myself. And then I know it will get done how I want it and get done right. But the problem, like I said, then the people working for me don't get the experience of whatever project or task. And so I had to learn that. And that was one thing I was actually able to learn pretty early on is delegating this thing and letting them do it and say, hey, if you have any questions, come to me, but I'm going to let you do this thing.
And
And
letting them mess up.
letting them mess up and then providing feedback and having them do it again. And guess what? Sometimes the end product is not what I would have done, how I would have done it, but doesn't mean it's bad.
Mm-hmm.
And what that also did is freeing up my time to focus on other things. And so that's just such a big skill to learn how to delegate and then like really let it go and then helping them through the process, not micromanaging them.
Well, and there is a fine line because you don't want to be a leader that delegates absolutely everything,
Hmm.
right? Because then you're perceived as lazy.
Yeah.
So you will have to do some things. Um, but I completely agree with that because otherwise, yes, you're micromanaging, you're controlling the outcome to what you want it to be, not necessarily what it should be, right?
Yeah. And so you have to learn what you can delegate, what you can't delegate, and treating those situations for your people as they are learning experiences. You can make mistakes because that's how we're going to learn. And it just makes them better for it. And like I said, it frees up your time to focus on what's important, the things you have to get done, these mission critical like tasks that you have to do. And then you're going to be able to spend more time on those because you're not doing other things because you wouldn't let those go. And those are some of the biggest things I see new leaders, those biggest pitfalls for a new leader is you're not really focusing on what you need to focus on. You're not, learning how to be a leader, not learning your people, and then ultimately you're not delegating. And then you're just busy all the time. And then you miss things too.
You miss things, and what are you? I think sometimes too. What are you accomplishing
Yeah.
at that point? Are you accomplishing anything of importance, or are you just so busy not delegating, controlling the outcome, being afraid of making a mistake that that's what's consuming all your time?
And for me, what I kind of was able to open people's eyes that worked for me when I was in a position where I'm leading leaders, like a lieutenant or a captain. And I'd always have this question for the leaders that worked for me: Are you working harder than your people?
Mm-hmm.
Like doing tasks?
Yes.
And if they would always kind of like, hmm, well, yeah. Why is that? And I'm asking open-ended questions. It's coaching,
Mm-hmm.
right? Let's get there. Meaning, are you not delegating? Do you not have high enough expectations? Are you so worried something's going to go wrong? Are you avoiding having the hard conversation and I'll just do it myself?
Mm-hmm.
And that's why you're not delegating. And there's so many different directions that can go. But if you're a leader listening to this podcast, ask yourself that question. Are you working harder than your people? And I'm not saying you should be like working way less than them, but you know, that can be a sign of maybe you're not delegating enough, or maybe you need to help lead them a little more when it comes to that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So, well, I think that's it for the podcast today. If you liked what I talked about, there's some leadership themes in the book, The Courage to Live. It's available on Amazon. And if you like the podcast, share it with a friend, subscribe, leave a review. And I appreciate you spending time with us today.